is different than an autobiography. An autobiography is more historic and it includes somebody's full life. But a memoir has to do with an event that changes everything. And I had the opportunity to be in a workshop with Mary Karr. Mary Karr is the memoirist because she changed the genre forever. So before Mary Karr, memoirs were for presidents or celebrities, or Jane Fonda or Brooke Shields. I don't even know who those people are, but anyways. But now memoir has to do with incidents. So there's this memoir called A House in the Sky, and it's about this woman who was kidnapped for 440 days in Somalia or somewhere, I don't remember. But there's another memoir that's about this guy who was a hoarder, and he chooses to clean up his house, and he explains the psychological process that he has to go through. And so Mary Karr is such an important author that, so the most successful writer in the world is, right now, J.K. Rowling. She's a billionaire, she lives in England. But in the United States, it's James Patterson, number one, and then Stephen King. Well, Stephen King wrote a book about writing. It's called On Writing. And he starts by talking about Mary Karr. That's how important she is. And she's not very famous because she doesn't have all these books that have turned into movies, and she's not a millionaire like Stephen King. But she's very well respected. She's what I would call a writer's writer. And she's more than that, she's a poet. And so her reading is very thorough and very profound and very elaborate. And it's dense. So it's packed with different, it's like poetry for me, it's encoded. And so you have to pay more attention and think about what they're trying to say. But anyway, so this memoir, the moment that changed everything is the moment that I had to leave Mexico and when my son was diagnosed with autism. And those two things happened at the same time, like within a week. So we moved on January 13th and my son was diagnosed on January 20th. And that's how it happened, 2005. And so I wrote this memoir, and it's 30 years and 30 chapters. It took me a while to figure out the structure. Like I was telling the other group, I'll tell you briefly, but I started writing all these essays and I didn't know what they were going to be. And so I took the essays to another writer, and she said, I thought I was going to write a book about my family, the Longoria family. And I did like 17 interviews to my dad's cousins. They were older. And so after all those interviews, I had all this information and I was very committed to that. And then I had all these other stories that had to do with me. And so she said, these are not two different books, it's just one. And I just had to figure out how to put all of that together. And so I competed in a mentorship, and it took me a while. I competed 2 times and failed. And then the third time I won. And so when I was gonna go meet with my mentor, I told the other group, I had this dream. A dear friend of mine was living in San Antonio and she had lived here for 7 years. And my dream, I told her that the only way that she could understand her experience is that if she found one word for every month. And so that specific day, I drove to see the mentor, and she kept telling me, you have to write scenes. It has to be scenes. And she said, you have to write 30 scenes. For some reason, she said 30. And I was thinking about my workshop, and that was a 15-day trip. And I thought, I'll write 15 days and then 15 years, and then I'll mix them. But no, that was not going to work. And so I kept thinking about it, and I thought, 30 scenes, 30 scenes, 30 scenes, 30 scenes, 30 years and 30 chapters. And that's how I figured out my structure. And so they were just asking me how long it took me to write. I wrote it in 30 weeks. I had a schedule. I wrote it mostly from 4 to 7 a.m. I would wake up early and I would write. And so I would write from Monday to Friday, and then on the weekends I would edit. And I had to finish a chapter a week, because like I was explaining to the previous group, when you knit, I don't know if you knit or know anything. I did a long time ago. I don't knit anymore. But when you knit, if you don't knit constantly, then some parts are tight and then it looks all crooked. And so the whole point is that the whole thing needs to look smooth. So the same thing happens with writing. I don't know if you've read books, and then when you're reading the book, there's like a hiccup, there's like a what happened here, and maybe the writer stopped writing or something happened. And so I didn't want that to happen. I wanted the book to be smooth. So a really good metaphor, I was a journalist, and so I can tell you that being a journalist is like being a sprint runner. You just have to run and be done, and that's it. This is like a marathon. It's a really long project, and it demands not stamina and velocity, and it demands resistance. It demands tenacity. It demands like not to give up. You just have to keep going. And of course, some parts are better than others. I will read to you the best parts or the funny parts or the poetic parts because they're tight. But there are other parts that are not as fun. But that's the way books are. I mean, if the whole book was a poem, then you wouldn't read it because it would be super, super dense. And if the whole book was just action, maybe you would find it boring. Maybe somebody would like it. But there has to be a little bit of everything. And so, so I just wrote it, and then I was done with it. And after I was done with it, it took me a whole year and a half to have it finished. So I was also telling the other group that this is my 14th draft. So when the book was finished, it was another year and a half of re-editing and re-editing and re-editing. And the proofreaders were a really important part of it, because the proofreaders, so the book was blind. I was blind to the book. I couldn't read it anymore because I couldn't feel it. First, problem number one is that it's my story. But problem number two is my writing. And so I couldn't react to it anymore. And so I had to have different readers tell me what they thought. And I just tell them, just write next to the writing, just write notes like check or no or question marks, or I understand this or I don't understand this, or this is funny or this is not funny, or this doesn't work, and why it doesn't work. Because at that point I didn't know. But one of the things I learned from Eric Carr, and I can tell you this so you keep that in mind. So first drafts are just trash, just so that you know. My first drafts are trash, and your first drafts are trash, and Stephen King's first drafts are trash. And so good writing is rewriting. We've learned this in school, but it is really true. And so the process of writing, and we just read this, to think about what you're going to write is 85%, according to what I just read recently. Then the writing is 5%. And then the rewriting is like 15%. And so, or I gave you wrong numbers, whatever goes to 100, that works. But what I'm trying to tell you is that I started thinking about writing a book in 2010. I wrote the book in 30 weeks. And then I rewrote it in a year and a half. But this book has been in my mind for a really long time. And so I think that there's two sides to writing. One is what you're going to say, and the other one is how you're going to say it. And they're both just as important. In journalism, what you're going to say is way more important because you're in a hurry, okay? But in literature, how you're going to say it is more important, because there are books that you're like, what is this book about? I don't know, but it's beautiful. And nothing really happens. It's just words that are just like threaded together in a beautiful, melodic, rhythmic, incredible way. And we just want to read them because they sound great. But for many people, that's not enough. So we have to think about both things, what you want to say and how you're going to say it. But pouring it out is very easy. And like I was telling the other group, I compare writing to singing. We can all sing. Everybody sings. You just get in the shower and you play the music and you sing. And so there's that. And then there's opera singers. So there's a big spectrum of singing, right? Writing is the same. So writing is healing, period. And I believe that we should all write. We should journal and we should write, and we can throw it away. That's an option. There's that. And then there's publishing. So the thing about publishing is that it's very demanding because you're supposed to entertain a reader. It's not just for me. It's supposed to be well written. It's supposed to be well read. It's supposed to be smooth. It's supposed to go well. And so there's a big spectrum, but I really think that we should all sit down and write. And like I was telling the first group, I started journaling when I was about your age. I journaled from 15 to 25. I threw all of that in the trash because when I would reread it, I thought, oh God, this is terrible. And it was depressing. And so I thought, I don't want to read this again. But it served its purpose because I had the discipline of every single day recapping the day and thinking about my day and thinking about what did I think about what I went through and why was it important or not important. And then pour out my feelings about the day. And it really doesn't matter what I wrote. What matters is the process that I went through. And so when people ask me about how I remember all this stuff, and they think I have my journals and I was cheating and I was copying from my journals, no, I didn't, because I threw them away. But still, this starts when I'm 20. This book starts when I'm 20 years old and ends when I'm 50. And so that capacity to detail has a lot to do with journalism, because I did use that professionally. But it has to also do with writing. Once you write something, it becomes a thing.